A well-drafted public policy ensures that the government's objectives and goals are clearly outlined. In this video, we aim to provide a guideline to government institutions, public officials, policy advisors, political parties, NGOs, and other civil society groups on how to draft an effective public policy. Welcome back to Public Administration 101, proudly brought to you by Kano Consultants. For professional advice you can trust. In this video, we will provide guidelines on how to draft an effective public policy. By first providing an overview and a background on public policy and the various steps in the public policy process, we will then list our 5 tips for drafting a government policy and what factors to consider when drafting an effective public policy. We will then conclude by discussing the importance of a well-drafted public policy. Before we get into today's video, if you are watching this on YouTube, we would like to remind you to please check out our other videos on public administration under this channel, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content. You can also support the channel by signing up to our Patreon page for early releases of these videos and for more content. Check out the link to our Patreon page on the description below. Now, let us get into today's video by first defining what public policy is. A public policy is a course of action by world leaders, politicians, lawmakers, regulators, government officials, as well as other stakeholders, to address the needs of the citizens, or to resolve an issue of public concern, or even set an agenda. Public policies are essentially developed and implemented to meet certain goals. There are various steps in the public policy process which involve identifying the problem, setting the agenda, developing and formulating the actual policy, implementing the policy, and once such public policy has been set, it must be evaluated. This video forms part of our series in Public Policy Process, where we explain the public policy process in a simplified way by looking at the 5 phases of the public policy process, which are problem identification, agenda setting, policy formulation, policy implementation, and policy evaluation. So, should you wish to understand more about the public policy process and the various types of public policies, please check out these videos under our channel. We will also include the links to these videos in the comments section below this video. In this video, we will focus on developing and drafting of a public policy. Let's start by providing our 5 tips for drafting an effective public policy. Firstly, policymakers need to determine whether there is a need for a public policy. Policymakers therefore need to consider if there is a need for a new public policy, or amend an existing one, or consider leaving the current situation as it is. A need for formulating a new policy, or replacing or amending an existing one, can arise out of any one or more of the following reasons, which are changes in society, changes in technology, political regime change, demands from donors and funders, international commitments, and pressure from courts, lobby groups, or advocacy groups. One of the factors that may influence the need for a new policy or an amendment of an existing public policy is changes in society. Every society experiences changes from time to time. This therefore requires the formulation of guidelines for dealing with the changing circumstances, such as changes in social demographics, changes in the economy of the country, etc. The next factor that may influence the need for a new policy or an amendment of an existing public policy is changes in technology. History is full of examples of new technologies having a fundamental impact on how government operates. Advances in technology not only enhances and streamlines administrative tasks and service delivery, they can also change the role of government, or entirely reorganize its core functions. The next factor that may influence the need for a new policy, or an amendment of an existing public policy is political regime change. The rise of a new political group inevitably brings a new agenda, a new vision, and a new mission that requires new strategies. This new vision and new mission is normally based on public opinion and beliefs, and based on current socio-economic issues. Another factor that may influence the need for a new policy, or an amendment of an existing public policy is demands from donors and funders. Funders and donors are becoming more and more demanding. And as a result, support from these agencies is always related to the implementation of some kind of socio-economic reform in the country or government institution receiving such donations or funds. In order to receive funding, a government might be required to adopt new policies or modify existing public policies. Another factor that may influence the need for a new policy or an amendment of an existing public policy is international commitments. Globalization has also made it possible for countries to connect and work with each other. These has resulted in countries signing international agreements, which usually requires each government to adopt a new public policy or amend existing ones. Another factor that may influence the need for a new public policy or an amendment of an existing public policy is pressure from courts, lobby groups, or advocacy groups. This is because, as people become more empowered, and certain lobby groups become more active and influential, these stakeholders can force governments to adopt new policies or amend existing policies to their advantage. These groups may also ask the courts to rule on issues that result in the creation of a new public policy or a review of existing policies. Our second tip for drafting an effective public policy is policymakers need to consider using an adopted template which is approved and well recognized. A consistent template should be used when formulating and drafting public policies. This simplifies policy creation and results in policies that are easier to categorize and understood. The adopted public policy should contain at least the following information. Firstly, the purpose of the policy. This explains the goals and objectives of the policy. The purpose must be clear, comprehensive, and persuasive in order to justify the policy. Then, the scope of the policy. This is where the policy identifies specific areas which will be covered, including stakeholders that will be affected by the policy. It may give preferential treatment to certain groups of people, and may exclude certain people or actions. A public policy must also include important terms and concepts used in the policy document. These terms must be clearly and unambiguously defined to eliminate the possibility of their multiple interpretation. The public policy must also state the effective date of the policy. Usually, policies come into operation at a future date, but in exceptional circumstances, a policy can be applied retrospectively for valid reasons. A public policy must obviously include specific guidelines. This is where the policy indicates the specific regulations, requirements, or changes the policy is intended to enact. Collectively, these statements give general guidance to those making it regarding the actions to be taken. Based on these statements, a strategy or set of strategies will be prepared by those responsible for its implementation. Every public policy must have an institution responsible for its formulation and implementation. However, where such institution does not exist yet, the policy will clearly outline the government agency to be created, and the stakeholders tasked with such responsibility. A public policy must make reference to other related policies or documents, where possible. This will ensure that related policies are read in conjunction with each other. Every policy must also repeal, any similar policy or certain clauses affected by the new policy, which were issued in the past. These are just some of the information, at minimum, which should be included in a public policy. Our third proposal, in drafting an effective public policy, is that policymakers, responsible for formulating a new policy, or responsible for amending existing ones, need to ensure that the public policy is written in a plain language. And where possible, such policy is available in other official languages of the country. This will ensure that such policy is easily understood by an informed reader. It does happen that sometimes a public policy is written in legalese. This ensures that the exact intention of the policy is reflected. For instance, using the words such as should, can, and may implies that there is a choice, whereas the word must does not. Therefore, the choice of specific words will assist the reader to know if the government institution intends to be permissive or prescriptive. Knowing the intent will further assist in selecting the terminology for the policy. Our fourth suggestion for drafting an effective public policy is that the policy must be clear about the criteria to be used to judge the success of such policy. This will ensure that policy advisors and government institutions manage the progress and properly evaluate the outcomes of the policy. Our fifth and last suggestion for drafting an effective public policy is that government policies, just like policies of any other institution, must be reviewed regularly to ensure that they remain current and relevant. There is usually no timeline on when to review a policy. However, it is recommended that governments should determine a reasonable period for reviewing its policies. The policy must also identify public officials or stakeholders responsible for such review. Policies must further state review dates in advance to ensure that reviews are not forgotten. Before we continue to the next section on the importance of drafting a public policy, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this video. In conclusion, a well-drafted public policy ensures that the government's objectives and goals are clearly outlined. Good public policies also ensure that governments address certain issues in the society and challenges. Therefore, politicians, government officials, policy advisors, and advocacy groups must develop and formulate public policies that are clear, and more importantly, that address the challenges facing the public. We've come to the end of this video on drafting a public policy. So, thank you for watching. Please take time to check out our other videos on public administration and public finance under this channel, where we discuss various topics relating to public administration, as well as public management and the management of the public sector, including the running of government. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content. And remember to turn on the notification button to make sure that you don't miss out when we post new videos. You can also connect with us by following us on social media at ConsultKano, and continue the conversation by leaving us a comment below or tagging us on social media using the hashtag ConsultKano. Thank you again for watching. Join us again next time for another video. Until then, check out these other videos. Kano Consultants. For professional advice you can trust.